Welcome to Conversations with Bob and Sherry. Unfortunately, Sherry's not here, but Pete Linko is joining me today. Pete is the Director of Grassroots Operations with Americans for Prosperity, Pennsylvania. Hi, Pete.
Hey, it's awesome to be on. We're missing Sherry, but looking forward to the conversation today.
Pete, just real quick, can you tell us what Americans for Prosperity is?
Absolutely. So, Americans for Prosperity is a 501c4 nonprofit. We're a nonpartisan organization that's looking to remove barriers that are keeping individuals from reaching their fullest potential. And we're doing that by citizen contact. We're doing that by scaling the voice of the people, the voice of the voters up to their elected officials, and seeing policy change and the direction of our Commonwealth move in the right direction.
All right. How did you get involved in this?
Well, I have a background where maybe like some of your listeners, I wasn't involved in politics at all. I voted, right? I was interested. I'd watch shows like Bob and Sherry, and I enjoyed that talk, the back and forth. But I really wasn't in the loop of understanding how I could make a difference. And it really started. It was a slow process, but essentially, I went from not being involved, other than voting, to being knee deep in really the fight to save our Commonwealth and to have common sense and civility in the public sphere and fighting for that in a way that's meaningful and bringing that to the forefront. I worked in logistics. Again, I only voted. That was about it. I watched the news every once in a while. But I started to realize, and I want to encourage those that are watching that you can have an impact. And I can tell you that for sure because I was right there, maybe where you are today, and it was a slow transition, but I was able to see that hey, my voice matters, and all of our voices matter, and that's why it's so important that we're involved, not just in the process, but discussion like we're doing today. And I so appreciate you guys and your show and the discussions that you put around that. But I realized that there was something that I needed to do more. And I have a little guy now. He's a year and a half and another one on the way. And that emphasizes to me so much more why good people, everyday people like myself, need to be in the process of turning around our Commonwealth. It was interesting in December of 2020. Maybe we can kind of visualize that. It was a pretty dark time, pretty depressing time. There was a lot going on. There was, for most people, there was whether it was the coronavirus, whether there was the political scene, not necessarily the brightest time in our history. I actually was sick with the coronavirus. I was laying in bed, and there was an article that popped up on my screen. And that was kind of the start, one of the starting points of transitioning into being an active role in change and using my voice. There was an article from Pittsburgh Magazine that was saying that our beloved Christmas tree was being taken down. And if you've ever been to Pittsburgh at Christmas time, you've seen that iconic tree. You've seen that beautiful, that shining light of hope there at the point. And that was really a turning point for me because I said, man, that seems like that's such an iconic tree. Why would we be getting rid of it? And that night, as I'm laying there with the coronavirus, not really able to do anything. I was out of work. I couldn't work at that point. And I was working in logistics, so it was a busy time. But I made a petition, and within a week, we had 10,000 signatures from people all around the city that wanted to see that tree saved. We had the support of the Democratic mayor at the time, and and from someone who was about to become the Republican nominee for mayor. We had support from across the aisle, different local elected officials calling me and saying, hey, we support you. And within a week, we had it overturned, and the rest is history. And now that will continue on. That's a small story of how I realized that my voice, it's not what Pete Linko can do, but it's realizing that each one of us has a voice that can make the difference and change the trajectory. The tree's a small thing, but think about other policies, other things that are coming down the pike towards us, that we all need to stand up and say, you know what, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna be the difference maker, and I'm gonna join everyone around me, and I'm gonna continue to push for good change and policy adjustments where needed.
Yeah, I think that's a powerful story because, with social media, everybody can put their opinions out there. But I think there's a lot more desire for actually making a difference as opposed to just talking about something. It can be frustrating for people who really want to see change and not just complain about things, if you will.
Sure.
Then yeah, it's really encouraging to hear a story of someone who just got involved in one thing that people cared about.
Mm-hmm.
You were able to rally support around it and make a difference. So that kind of changed the trajectory of your life.
It absolutely did. And the amazing thing, I wasn't involved with Americans for Prosperity at that point. Actually, there was another turn of events where they were going to toll I-79, and I kind of had the same idea of, hey, this is not a good idea, and everyone was pretty much on board with that. Local elected officials, municipal leaders, and I started a petition, and we had about 15,000 signatures from citizens who said, hey, this is a bad idea, PennDOT. And eventually that was overturned by a lawsuit. And anyway, all of this solidified in my mind that I can make a difference, and the doors were opened for me to join Americans for Prosperity, and doing that kind of work every day is so fulfilling, and it shows me, and it's really something that I want to emphasize to those that are watching, that maybe things feel hopeless sometimes. Maybe you feel like, hey, there's not a lot that can be done. But I want to encourage individuals, because I've seen it in myself and realized the potential there. And I know we all have that potential to make a difference. And so I'd encourage everyone who's watching that start thinking about ways that you can get involved. And I know down a little bit down the line here, we'll talk about Americans for Prosperity Pennsylvania and how you get involved. But everyone has different avenues and unique connections that only you can impact. So make sure you're doing that.
Great. So what kinds of things does Americans for Prosperity do to affect these sort of changes?
Absolutely. Well, number one, we at this point in time, we feel that a lot of people, as we talk with individuals, we talk to people at the grocery store, we talk to people at church, we talk to people out at the park or wherever we find ourselves, people have lost hope in the American dream. And some feel it's unattainable. And I've talked with individuals of my generation and younger that just feel like it's a dream to try and even grasp that. But at Americans for Prosperity PA, we are trying to reignite that American dream and bring the reality of what we can do as individuals, as small businesses, what we can attain through removing those barriers that are hindering individuals. So at AFP, one of the things that we do, we have 5 ways that we feel that we can make the impact here. Number one, we provide policy solutions based on proven principles. These are things that we know they're going to work. Sometimes we look at elected officials and we wonder, hey, where's the common sense approach here? And so we want to be a voice for the people. It's interesting, Bob. Every industry has a lobby group. Right? It doesn't matter what group of you're with or what industry, there's a lobby group in Harrisburg. Mm-hmm. Well, we want to be the lobby group for the taxpayers, the largest group, the largest select group of individuals out there that doesn't really have anyone lobbying for them. And so that's what we do. We are there every day under the dome in Harrisburg, ensuring that good policy is considered and supported. And we certainly look at those elected officials that are doing that good work, and we want to support them and share what the people have to say in order to see that happen. We also work with organizing community members. We want to bring people together to solve those issues. We understand that everyone has a unique voice in these conversations, and we want to understand where individuals are in understanding how we can scale that up to our elected officials to ensure that the best approach is attained there as well. We also serve to educate, train, and mobilize citizens. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm going to be included in this, but how many times I've talked with people that are wanting to get engaged. They say, "Man, I want to do something, but I don't know how." At Americans for Prosperity Pennsylvania, we exist to be that group in the gap there, to give the tools that individual groups or just an individual themselves, they want to give back, they want to be a positive voice in these policy conversations. We want to serve as that, and it's an awesome outlet. Again, I wasn't involved, I wasn't connected, but it's amazing that there's groups like AFP PA that fill that gap, and it's exciting to be a part of it. And I'd love to extend that invite to those out there that want to make a difference. Get involved with us. We also advocate for policy reform. So there's a myriad of different policies that we work on, and all of those, and you can check out Americans for Prosperity PA. You can check us out on social media, and you can look at some of those policy perspectives and get on board there as well. And then lastly, we hold public officials accountable. So look, we understand that elected officials are accountable to the people. And so again, we want to scale the voice of the people, and we want to make sure that good policy is happening across the board.
Wow. Okay. So what are some of the ways you organize community members? Are there events that you have?
Absolutely. So we have a sister organization in the Grassroots Leadership Academy, and they're able to come into an organization or a group or a committee and provide training that organization needs, and whether that is through candidate recruitment or fundraising or a myriad of different opportunities, that whatever that group is needing, whatever that group is identified, we want to partner. Again, we want to be that group that partners with groups and committees and individuals and fill that gap to provide them the tools that they need to succeed. If your viewers would have any questions about that, I'd love to talk with them, and they can reach out, I'd love to discuss that more.
Can you talk about the American dream a little bit? And, in your conversations with people, you say they've kind of lost faith in it or sight of it. Even you using the words, or I know there was once a time for most of my life where when you said American dream, everybody saw that as a positive thing, and they might have their little emphases, but everybody generally knew what it meant. And I don't know that people share that vision anymore. I mean, some might take that as a negative, like it never existed kind of thing.
Bob, it's interesting. I heard a story the other day, and it was talking about individuals that had lived during the Great Depression. And maybe you've had family members that you've talked to personally, or friends, older relatives that had lived through that time. And it was an interesting point that I heard, that even through the Great Depression, and we think about that, and we've heard the horrors and the struggle, but yet the resilience that citizens had through that time. One of the key points that I took away from this story was that the emphasis on, we never lost hope that it will be better someday. And I think of the stark contrast of today, where I think we've lost that hope. I think we're in a desperate time where people say, well, this is it. We're going down the tubes. And we've lost that grasp of hope. And when I think about the American dream, I think about a lot of different aspects of that, and a lot of different things. We think about 100 years ago, nearly, as we think about the Great Depression and how times have changed in different ways. But man, God help us to not lose that hope. When I think about the reigniting the American dream, and that's what we're doing at Americans for Prosperity, is making sure that we're talking about this. We're talking about those policies that are holding individuals back, that are holding small businesses back. We want to make sure that we're releasing that potential. And we think about the various barriers in the way, as I've kind of spoken about already. Like, let's reanalyze that. Let's start having conversations like what we're doing right now to talk about, hey, we've been going down the wrong path here. And maybe we seem hopeless for a reason. Maybe there's some things that we really need to drastically change. Let's consider that, and let's redirect as a nation and as a people.
there's sort of a, I guess you would call it a progressive sort of narrative. If somebody, more traditional white guy says something like about the good old days or reminisces about the good of the past, there's another mindset that says, well, it was only good for white people back then. He's that proves that he just wants to go back to a time of more white supremacy. But it's a pessimistic view of our past. That happened this week, and I remembered a gentleman that we interviewed and early on in our show. He was running for office. He's a black man living in a majority black neighborhood. They're currently poverty stricken and crime ridden. And he mentioned something at the end about longing for a better time, a simpler time, when he was growing up. And I asked him, where did you grow up? And he said, Homewood. So Homewood's one of these, high crime and sugar. And I asked him, well, what was it like for you? And this would probably go back to the 60s or 70s. And he described it as Leave It to Beaver. So, it would be a black community, but it was in his mind like a Leave It to Beaver. So that just kind of tells me there that, just because someone says we're looking back at the past and longing for a simpler, better time, people tend to remember the good stuff. They look back on, there were struggles, and more difficult money challenges and things like that. But all people look back and they remember the good things, and they want to preserve what was good from the past and take that forward. And I just think that's more of an optimistic mindset as opposed to someone who just has to, for some reason, they have to look at everything in the past as bad.
Oh man, and I think, again, I keep going back to that Great Depression, that conversation, that story. It's just so powerful to me that, when was there a lower point in our history, if you will, where as a society as a whole, there was such challenges, but yet there was hope. And I think, coming back to that is really the key here is we need to instill that hope. Again, I think of my little guy and my the little one that's on the way, and I think, man, I hear so often, from individuals from young families or older people that say, man, I'm sorry you're bringing kids into the world, and I say, no, I want to have hope for them, and that's really what drives me, and drives so many people, that they see their families and they see the next generation. That's why we're doing what we're doing. Is to stand up for them and to make America better than it's ever been. Sure, there's ways that need to be improved, but let's have that hope at the core of everything we do.
What do you think are some of the things we could improve that would have the most impact on prosperity for Americans, just the lifestyle of each and every American?
Well, there's a lot, isn't there? We think about energy. Look at the cost of just the fuel costs, right? That's one element of the conversation, something we've been talking about across the board, and we've done events. Last year we did gas station events for True Cost, and it was called the True Cost of Washington Tour, and we're actually doing another tour this year called Prosperity is Possible. But with that True Cost tour, we essentially highlighted the cost of gas that it was on when the Biden administration went into effect, $2.38 a gallon, right? And sometimes, man, I long for those days. I look at the price of gas and it's like, oh my goodness, right? That's one example right there, right? How can we see that those energy policies go into effect? Man, we have so much potential for energy. We have energy abundance here in the United States. Let's unleash that on the United States and the world, frankly. Look at healthcare. Healthcare is in turmoil. We see this public option that we've talked about over and over for the last decade, 2 decades here. What about a personal option? And that's one of the conversations that we're bringing to the table. We want to bring common sense solutions when it comes to healthcare. You can personalize anything. You can personalize your phone plan. You can personalize what you want in your car when you buy it. You can personalize just about everything. Let's talk about healthcare in that way as well. Government spending, look at that, it's out of control. And we've kind of just went through the debt talks and that and everything. But just as a general rule, if we look at the spending and just unaccountability, and we want to make sure that we're holding our elected officials accountable, that they're doing what's right for the people, and also making sure that we have a balanced budget. I think that's a fair thing to attain and hope for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it should be kind of a scary thing if people would realize how far in debt that, the federal government is and how we're so much dependent on other countries. I mean, we're almost exclusively an importer of essential goods. And COVID pointed some of that out. We couldn't even get antibiotics. So, that yeah, but it's complicated too. I mean, when people think about the budget, you say we just had a little bit of a debt battle. Oh, we're not going to raise the ceiling. There's compromises. Do you have a sense that anything positive happened there?
Well, I can say this. I know going back and forth that everyone kind of has had their conversations. We watch social media, right? We can see those back and forths there. I think the key takeaway here is that we have to get back on track as a country and unify around this idea that just in my personal life and your personal life, Bob, all of us, we have to have we can't be spending more than we take in, right? And so if we're headed towards that direction, we're in a good spot. And so I think that's kind of my takeaway from that conversation.
People just tend to, they get into their camp and, if like I see Democrats now that Biden's in office saying, well, the president has no influence over fuel prices and the president has no influence over, but yet when Trump was in office, they're the same people that was blaming him for everything that was not right in the economy. And actually everything was really good up until COVID.
Yeah, it really highlights just this absolute like disconnect that I think that we're experiencing, and really we have to get back to seeing each other and talking with each other, and that sense of civility that I think we've really lost. There has to really be a better way where, yeah, we're going to disagree, right? That's okay. Let's talk through it. Let's work through it. Let's have an understanding of each other's point of view. And let's respect one another too. That's something that I think, again, going back to that Great Depression story, man, the respect that was had as a society and culture for one another. And I think we need that. I think we need to reanalyze that as a society.
Yeah, I feel like sharing. We used to have shared values. Every American could generally agree on something. And it feels like a lot of that is lost. It's like we've gotten so deep into this. There's good people on our side, bad people on the other side, and it's black and white. That's the way it is. We can't talk. We can't respect one another.
And Bob, one of the principles that Americans for Prosperity, Pennsylvania, one of the things that we hold to is that Frederick Douglass quote, which says, "I will work with anyone to do good and no one to do harm." And certainly we don't want to look at any individual and say, oh, well, you're from that group or whatever. No, we look at everyone and say, how can we partner? How can we make a difference? How can we make the impact together and bring folks together into the same room to have those discussions and ultimately not just leave it at a discussion, but turn it into a policy win.
So as a director of grassroots operations, does that mean you have direct influence over these, what you called as grassroots, the training and the outreach and things like that?
How our state works, we have different regions throughout the state. So we have different regional, we call them grassroots engagement directors. And so they're responsible for really impacting the community and connecting those groups, those individuals with that vision of reigniting the American dream and providing that training, providing opportunities to, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but providing opportunities for them to get involved in the processes and have voter contact opportunities, volunteer, and making phone calls. We know that the grassroots is what makes the difference. We know that. And so again, we are playing that role to provide the tools and the opportunity for folks who are engaged and they don't have that route to really apply, to really hit the ground running. We want to come alongside you and partner with you to ensure that that's happening.
So the natural question tends to be, how can people get involved to help you? What if we flip that and say, how can people get in touch with you and engage so that you can help them?
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about. We recognize, look, Pete Linko can only do so much, right? It's not about me, it's not about even our team. It's about what the people on the ground can do and how we can partner with you. I love how you formed that. It's not about getting involved with us. It's really seeing how we can come together, and we want to make sure that we're providing the tools that individuals need to make a difference. Right now we do have paid opportunities across the state of Pennsylvania for going door to door to have voter contact. So we're talking with voters to see, hey, what's top of mind as we go into this big year next year, right? Understanding where voters are, understanding their candidate preference, just understanding where individuals are, having conversations. Again, we know that's where it makes the difference. We can do a lot. We see the different campaign ads and the TV. We want to be right there in our communities, talking with our neighbors, understanding, getting a pulse on what's happening. And so there's paid opportunities right now across PA. We are hiring at $20 an hour with mileage reimbursement to knock doors, to talk with voters around those issues. And really, I love that opportunity. It was one of the first things that I was able to get involved with as I my mind opened to see how I can get involved, is going door to door, talking with voters to see, hey, what's on your mind? Here's the potential that we have as Americans together and as Pennsylvanians together. Let's unify around a policy, and let's fight for it. Let's stand up for it.
Now, is there a minimum age for workers in that
Yes.
paid
So
position?
the minimum age is 18 years old
Okay.
that we are hiring on, and it's a part-time role. So 25 to 30 hours would be about the maximum there, with about a 15-hour commitment a week. But it's very doable. A couple hours a week, especially I've had different individuals approach me that maybe have a job, but they want to have a side job where they're making a difference, and that's one of the things that's so impactful. It's not just a job to go and do, like a DoorDash or something like that, right? But it's
Hmm.
like, hey, I'm having an impact. I'm talking with voters. I'm helping them understand where we are, but I'm also like kind of gathering information from them and just seeing how we can unite going forward and make that difference.
Now, do people go out individually? Do you team them up?
Yeah, so we have different routes. Everyone's a little bit different. Sometimes
Okay.
individuals like to just go out by themselves, or sometimes we'll go out as a team. We have days of action where we all kind of, wherever we are in the corners of the states, we go out one Saturday a week and have that impact. So there's definitely different opportunities. Now that's the paid opportunity, but we also have opportunities of volunteering and making calls even from your home. If you want to make a difference, that's a great way to do it. We can set you up. It's a really simple process, and then you're able to just talk with neighbors. There's a list of individuals that you talk to, and you're able to again have that impact, and get involved and feel a part of the process. It's a very rewarding thing.
Now, for the training and such, if we had a group for you to come and train, and is there a cost for that?
Sure. So that's, with our Grassroots Leadership Academy. So again, a little bit of a separate step away from AFPPA, but again, yeah, there would not be a cost associated with it. Again, we feel that we have the tools that we've that have worked, and so we want to make sure that we are providing that and getting individuals involved in the process. We know sometimes there's folks that are ready to go. They just need that little bit of encouragement, that little bit of a direction to really hit the ground running. So that's definitely something that individuals can reach out to me, and we would love to get you connected with our Grassroots Leadership Academy.
Okay, very good.
A little known tool, but it's a very impactful tool as well for anyone who's watching.
Do you have any sort of accomplishments that AFP can talk about? Things that they've done in the past or progress they've made?
Absolutely. One of the things that we really highlight is when we think about the emergency powers with Governor Wolf and kind of shutting that down. That was a huge. We partnered with so many individuals across the state to help see that cease, and so
Really?
that was on. That was definitely on accomplishments. That was before I came on, but that was definitely something that we rallied around. So many rallied around the state, and that's a great example of
That's
partnering with
huge, by the
individuals
way.
that, hey, let's get this on the ballot. Right, let's get this in
Hmm.
front of voters to see what they have to say about it, and we were able to drive that home along with so many across the state and see that succeed.
Now that's a big issue and a huge one. I remember sort of the rhetoric against it was that if you take away the powers of the governor, then people will die, that kind of thing. But if I recall, the way I think it's an amendment, constitutional amendment that they passed, that the legislature would have to vote on it. So in other words, he would have 2 weeks or 4 weeks of emergency powers, and then to keep renewing it, they would have to vote to agree to it. And my thought was, well, I remember COVID, everybody's life was shut down. I mean, what else is the legislature to be doing? you know, there shouldn't be anything else for them to care about in the times of an emergency. So yeah, they made it out like, oh well, it's the legislature. You got to get them all together. I think they should be together in the state of emergency. So I felt the counter argument to that was pretty weak.
Sure, absolutely. And again, it's just a great embodiment of thinking around what the people unified together can accomplish for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when people rightly understand an issue,
Mm.
then it's amazing what we can do. I mean, unfortunately, the part of the problem I think is we're divided by mischaracterizations and things.
Sure,
So it's
absolutely.
arguing an issue on its merits.
Sure, absolutely. No, I love that. I love that approach.
All right. Well, thanks, Pete. I been a pleasure talking to you. I love your enthusiasm, and I think it's going to be an attraction, really.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that so much, Bob, and it's been a pleasure to. I wish I could have connected with Sherry here, but so awesome talking with you, and so appreciate having us on today. And again, we want individuals. If you're at home and you feel like, man, I really want to get involved, we'd love to talk with you. I'd love to talk with you. You can shoot me an email at plinko @afphq.org. I'd love to talk with you and get you connected and unify those like-minded individuals on whatever policy, maybe some of the policies we've talked about, maybe you're passionate about. We'd love to get you involved and make a difference together.